It is not deniable to say that the economy of a region or territory is the major determinant of its power and status quo. Economy is a measurement scale used to rate the prosperity of a territory or continent. Before Africa's contact with Europe, Africa had a diverse and dynamic economic landscape shaped by a variety of factors including geography, climate, culture, and the availability of resources. The continent, then occupied by various kingdoms and empires, experienced economic prosperity that had significant impact to its political and cultural trade, to the extent that some of its trade legacy was discovered hundreds of years later, even after the collapse of some of its civilizations. Example of this was the Nok civilization, which was prosperous in art and metallurgy. It is important we note that Africa is a vast continent with a rich history of diverse civilizations and economic systems, with existing local industries and agricultural sustainability methods before and during colonialism. Before these indigenous industries were gradually and systematically suppressed and crushed by colonialism. The impact of colonialism on Africa's indigenous industry can still be felt till date. Many African industries find it difficult to compete with other international companies producing similar products because of the stigma created and other factors which will be discussed later in this video. Welcome to History Africa. Here we focus on rejuvenating African narrative, exposing the doctrines, customs, culture and practices of Africa. Africa's economic history can be divided into several stages, but our focus in this video will be majorly the period before the documentations of plants and animals, the development of agriculture, and the era of colonialism. Africa has the longest and oldest economic history. As soon as human activities came into existence, so did economic activity. One factor that revolutionized agriculture and fostered economic activities was the discovery of iron. Historians believe that iron working developed independently in Africa. Unlike other continents, Africa did not have a period of copper and bronze working before their iron age because they are superior in technology. In Nubia and Ethiopia, iron trade and agricultural surpluses led to the establishment of cities and civilizations. Agriculture was by far the most dominant and extensive economic pursuits of Africans. Fruit crop production was easily the dominant type. There was hardly no community that did not practice crop production either full-time or part-time. Nevertheless, some tribes practiced animal husbandry. For instance, the pre-colonial history of the thieves of Nigeria showed that they had been a land-hungry and expansionist people specialized in yam farming. The Ogoja and Ejagan people of Upper Cross River were also prodigious farmers and among the chief suppliers of yam to the Efiks of the Lower Cross River. They engaged in intercommunal trade, which at some point of time grew into long-distance trade. While some level of trade has been ongoing, the rise of cities and empires made it far more central to the African economy. North Africa was central to the trade of the entire Mediterranean region. Nubia in Sudan likewise traded with interior African countries such as Chad and Libya, as well as with Egypt, China, India and the Arabian Peninsula. For most of the 4th century AD, the Aksumite kingdom in Ethiopia and Eritrea had a powerful navy and trading links reaching as far as the Byzantine Empire and India. Between the 14th and 17th century, the Ajuran Sultanate, centered in modern-day Somalia, practiced hydraulic engineering and developed new systems for agriculture and taxation, which continue to be used in part of the Horn of Africa as late as the 19th century. On the east coast of the continent, Swahili traders linked the region into an Indian Ocean trading network, bringing imports of Chinese pottery and Indian fabrics in exchange for gold, ivory, and slaves. Swahili kingdoms created a prosperous trade empire which occupied the territory of modern-day Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. Swahili cities were important trading ports for trade with the Middle East and Far East. In the interior of Africa, trade was far more limited. Low population densities made profitable commerce difficult. With time, the gradual invasion of Islam transformed the economy of much of Africa. This was majorly through the long-distance trade. Muslims penetrated the Sahara due to large usage of camels, which had carried the Arab expansion and would soon after carry large amount of trade across the desert. A series of states developed in the Sahel on the southern edge of the Sahara, which made immense profit from trading across the Sahara. The first of these was the Kingdom of Ghana, reaching its peak in the 12th century. Soon, others such as the Mali Empire, the Kanem Bornu also arose in the region. The main trade of this state was gold, which was plentiful in Guinea. Also important was the trans-Saharan slave trade that shipped large numbers of slaves to North Africa. Aside this, there were other African traditional industries which are broadly classified into three. The first was soil-based, second plant-based, third animal-based. The soil-based industry included metallurgy, salt production, and poultry. The plant-based ones included textile, weaving, and woodwork. The animal-based ones included leather and ivory working. It would be unfair if the world denies Africa this truth of the existence of prosperous African indigenous traditional industries whose end was weakness majorly from the overflowing of European commodities of the same kind. Some of the ancient evidence of the use of metal and the growth of the industries was discovered in Nsukka in Nigeria, West Africa, followed by Nok. The industry was highly skilled and prosperous, and it formed the technological foundation of the society. Deities were revered and honored as supreme heads. For instance, among the Yoruba, Ogun was reverenced as the god of iron and also the god of war, and he was one of the most feared among the Yoruba. Some Igbo groups referred to their iron deity as Otipo, the destroyer, and some Akutako, literally meaning the impregnable. Salt was a major commodity that was used in trans-Saharan trade. Many varieties of salt was produced and traded over considerable distance. This included sodium chloride, the common salt we know, sodium sulfate, sodium carbonate, sodium phosphate, potassium phosphate, and calcium phosphate of various concentrations. Hopkins described this commodity as in many ways the most interesting and important of the minerals produced in West Africa. Poultry also was one of the ancient crafts that had its booming industry. In Africa, textiles were among the most universally traded local industry. It is no wonder Hopkins described it as one of the most important of West Africa's manufacturer in pre-colonial times. According to a research project by A1 Project Hope, the history of indigenous industries under colonial rule in Daral district 1903 to 1960, it wrote that prior to colonial administration, the indigenous technological advancement, especially blacksmith, leatherwork, poultry, textile industry, wood carving, among others, were flourishing professions among the inhabitants of Dara. Nevertheless, during colonial administration, the establishment of colonial policies such as taxation, compulsory cash crop production, conscription of bodied able men for forced labor in mining, among others, affected this industry such that this indigenous industry have faced retarded growth till date, not only in Dara but in Nigeria as a whole. Since the fall of many African indigenous industries during colonialism, many African countries have failed to rise in the aspect of industrialization. This failure should not be wholly blamed on the activities of colonial masters. Some of the reasons why Africa has failed to industrialize are as follows. 1. Visionless and clueless leadership on governance. According to Masimba Tafiriyinka, industrialization has been a campaign promise across the African continent, with its acknowledged ability to bring prosperity, new jobs, and better income for all. Yet, the continent is less industrialized today than it was 4 decades ago. Based on Masimba compilation, high commodity prices triggered by Chinese seemingly insatiable appetite for natural resources have fueled rapid economic growth in Africa since the 1990s. Many thought the boom will revive Africa's waning manufacturing industry, yet to the dismay of analysts, it failed to live up to expectations. Instead of using the windfall to set up or stimulate manufacturing industries, African countries, with a few exceptions, wasted the money on non-productive expenditures. Secondly, inability of African government to create a conducive environment suitable for small and medium-scale enterprise. Most SMEs are responsible for the drastic influence of a country's GDP and gradually industrialize if properly nurtured. Thirdly, limited access to capital. Many African businesses, especially small and medium-scale enterprises, face challenges in accessing capital. High interest rates, limited access to financial services, and a lack of collateral often hinder investment and expansion. Even those who independently source capital, the thoughtless policies of government frustrate their effort and make business very difficult. Fourthly, historical legacy. This is the most overemphasized and the foundational problem of Africans' inability to industrialize. Many African countries were subjected to colonization, and the exploitation of their natural resources during the colonial period has had lasting effects. The extraction of resources often occurred without significant investment in local industries, leaving many African economies heavily dependent on the export of raw materials. And African countries who try to industrialize get frustrated by big capitalist countries who benefit from the exploitation of their natural resources. Fifthly, deliberate efforts by capitalist countries to frustrate indigenous industries. One of the methods these capitalist countries use is overflooding African countries with cheaper commodities that are already produced in the country. I took time to study an aspect of the fashion industry, specifically shoemaking. I realized that at some point of time in that line of production, a lot of people were excelling and making remarkable progress, especially those in small and medium scale production. But the problem was, most of the materials that were used in making these shoes were imported. Therefore, majority of the quality for production was dependent on the quality of the material supplied. With time, the quality of production dropped, and the market was flooded with already made shoes of cheaper prices. This really affected the growth of that aspect of fashion, and many young entrepreneurs lost their jobs and the opportunity to build that aspect of fashion. To crown it up, many Africans are still bound in their thinking. It is unfair, it is unrealistic for economic growth to go on if we keep thinking the way we do. It is true that they may be free from leg and hand chains, but their mind. A lot of Africans prefer to patronize foreign imported goods. They don't believe in homemade goods. They believe they are inferior and less valuable. Sometimes in 2022, the government of Nigeria launched a campaign to encourage her citizens to buy made in Nigeria goods. Still within that season, the same government ordered for the purchase of foreign made vehicles when they had Innoson, an indigenous producer of cars. Ethiopia, Rwanda, and to a lesser extent, Tanzania are navigating towards the path of industrialization. The common thread among them is that they have embraced policies that target and favors their own manufacturing industries. Since 2006, Ethiopia's manufacturing sector has expanded by an annual average of more than 10%, partly because it has courted foreign investors. Ethiopia is leading by example. It has shown industrialization can happen in Africa. As Mogalo said, for capitalism to work for Africa, just as it has for China and much of East Asia, public policy makers must shake off the shackles of orthodoxy. Thank you for being part of this study. For further contribution and questions, please make sure to use the comment section. Do well to click on the subscription icon, hit the like button if you liked the video, and the notification icon to be notified when we upload a new video. Please do well to share this video. This is History Africa. Africa, know thyself.